So apart from it being World Children's Day, today is also Transgender Day of Remembrance. The day honors those in the transgender community whose lives have been lost due to violence, stigma, and discrimination. Gender Dynamix is hosting an education conference that speaks to gender identity, expression, and inclusion in education. The conference is underway in Salt River, Cape Town. Let's bring in SABC News reporter Reginald Witbooi. He's covering this story for us. Reginald, very good morning to you. So help us understand what we're talking about here, some of the terms that are used when talking about the transgender community. I guess it's important to understand that in order to understand where we're going to and why we need to get to a better place.
Well, a very good morning to you, Blaine, and also to our viewers. I think before we get to what all the abbreviations stands for and also cisgender, the conference is currently underway here in Salt River in Cape Town with various stakeholders from government departments, from higher education institutions, and as well, I know that the Department of Basic Education is also here in attendance just to map the way forward as to how they can assist so that learners who conform themselves to the LGBTQIA+ community is safe and also are not suffering at the hands of discrimination, because our Constitution is very clear when it comes to equality and also non-discrimination against anyone irrespective of your sexual orientation or irrespective of your race. Now, earlier on, various speakers said that there should be no way that people from the LGBTQIA+ communities should bargain their way for acceptance by society. But I'm going to bring in Sher Peterson, and Sher is from Gender Dynamix, just to explain to us what cisgender means, what LGBTQIA+ stands for, because we know it can be very complex and it can be very confusing for some. So a very good morning, Sher, and welcome to the SABC News channel. Just before we get to LGBTQIA+, just tell us what exactly does cisgender means?
So cisgender is when your gender identity that you actually express to the world matches with that was assigned at birth. So when you're born, a doctor looks at your genitals and says, that is a boy. And if that stays true throughout your life, if you feel that, sure, I am a boy, then that is what means to be cisgender. Whereas for trans people, that's quite different. You know, you're assigned male at birth, and as you get older and you start to discover more about yourself, you realize that what a doctor has said about you is not the truth, and your gender identity does not align with that. That would be trans, yeah.
Sticking to cisgender, so it has nothing to do with one's sexual orientation or your romantic preference?
No. So that's your own personal gender identity, and it doesn't influence your sexuality. Yeah.
Okay. When we get to LGBTQIA+, what does the L stand for?
The L stands for lesbian, so that would be women who are attracted to other women, or feminine identifying people who are attracted to other feminine identifying people.
G?
G, gay. That would be men who are interested in men or attracted to men, or masculine identifying people attracted to masculine identifying people.
B?
B, bisexual. That would be someone who is attracted to both men and women.
And the T?
T, transgender, as I explained before, when your gender identity and gender expression doesn't match what you were assigned at birth.
Now we're getting to Q.
Q is queer, so that's an umbrella term that includes anyone who doesn't fall within the spectrum of being heterosexual or being cisgender. So trans people, intersex people, lesbian, gay, bisexual.
And then we get to the I for intersex.
The I for intersex, so that would be people who are born with either hormonally different systems or differences in sex characteristics that you can't place within a binary of being either male or female. Often what happens with intersex people is a child is born, a doctor looks at their genitals and looks at their internal reproductive structures or looks at their genetic code and sees, something is not aligning, it's not necessarily stereotypically male or it's stereotypically female, and there's a lot of variations. And what often happens with intersex people is doctors make a decision based off what they see, and parents make this decision, and they decide to, if you're born with testes and external representing vagina, they decide we should remove the testes and allow the child to grow up as a woman. And often children are not told that they were born intersex.
The last two, the A.
The A. The A is agender or asexual. So agender or asexual people who don't, agender being people who don't identify with any gender or with other genders. And then asexual, someone who is not romantically attracted to anyone specifically.
The plus, lastly.
The plus is to indicate inclusion of all identities in the umbrella of queer LGBTQIA+. So there are obviously a variety of other people who have different expressions in terms of sexuality and gender that may not have been identified or may not have been fully disclosed or added. I mean, the acronym could get really long if we're adding every single letter. So that's just to show inclusion for all minorities within gender and sexuality.
Sure, lastly, and just briefly, do you think personally there's enough room for learners as well as students in the education sector to live their truth?
Currently, I would say no. I think there isn't a good framework educating both teachers and other learners about what it means to be gender diverse or on the spectrum when it regards your sexuality. So that obviously leads into spaces where bullying is quite an issue, and I think at a school level specifically, if kids were allowed to express themselves the way they wanted to, bullying would be substantially quite low. And I don't think that those frameworks are in place, which is why this conference is so important. Here we are discussing things with stakeholders and seeing how we can move forward to actually entering the education space so that we can, equip teachers, government officials, health officials, and the likes with the tools and the knowledge to be able to actually, manage and deal and really engage with people from our community.
Thank you so much. Well, Blaine, that was Sher Peterson from the Gender Dynamics, explaining to us what cisgender means, also giving us the explanation of LGBTQIA+, and also saying that this conference is important in terms of policy making, in terms of that no one should be discriminated against irrespective of their sexual orientation. But this two-day conference is going to take place, and there will also be robust discussions on policy framework. We also know that recently the South African European Union Legal Framework Conference also took place in Johannesburg. But those in attendance saying that more needs to be done for inclusivity, especially in higher education and also in society at large.
Important reporting, no doubt, Reginald and Sher Peterson raising important issues, topical issues, and it talks to World Children's Day as well. Bullying, unacceptable, but it still happens. What can we do to put paid to this? We're going to bring in a guest, Dr. Shahida Umar, next from the Teddy Bear Clinic, get some answers, get the way forward. But thank you very much indeed, Reginald Witbooi, live for us there in Cape Town. We'll catch up with you a little later on.